I'm Tom Adler, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here with Rudy Pozzatti in his studio in Bloomington, Indiana. We're going to talk a little bit about his works, which are in the permanent collection of the Art Museum of Greater Lafayette. First, let me ask you, when did you first become interested in art, and maybe when did you first decide you might become an artist?
Well, I think it goes way back, second grade maybe.
Okay.
Also partly in the genes. My mother did very beautiful embroidery work, did her own designs and images, and she had two brothers who did hand-carved sculpture and furniture. So I think it was there from the very beginning and nurtured by a lot of people. But living in a small mining town in southwest Colorado, there weren't many opportunities. So it really happened after I left, finished high school, and went to the University of Colorado.
Now, in our permanent collection, we have 4 of your works, 2 of them from the late 60s, early 70s, and 2 others from 2009, so it's quite a span.
Yes.
The first 2, the earlier ones, are an engraving of the medieval musician and a lithograph of 2 men.
2 men.
And then from 2009, we have that wonderful etching, Apollo, which is one of the most popular works in our collection. And then we have the Outer Worlds from that
2
same
outer
period.
worlds, right.
Can you tell us a little bit about the stylistic techniques that you were using at the time that you worked on both those separate sets of works?
The medieval musician is a hand-done engraving, pure engraving on copper plate. Had great interest in the medieval civilization and the architecture. Spent several years in Italy on a Fulbright and Guggenheim, so well steeped in the imagery, and always been interested in music. And I made drawings of things such as the subjects of the bell ringer and the zither player. I don't know which one of those.
We have the bell ringer.
The bell ringer, right. And loved also the medium of engraving, the idea of the linear depiction and the amount of control that one has to have, but at the same time a freedom to be able to express something because you're not using color. You're trying to create form and convincing people about three-dimensional qualities. The 2 men is, I came to lithograph later than the other media, and I'm a little more hesitant in the medium of lithography compared to etching and engraving and woodcut. But later on in my career, after spending about 3 months at Tamarind in Los Angeles, I got to do a tremendous amount of work, but mostly in making the imagery and letting everybody else do the technical part. And we printed small editions of 20, so we did a lot of work. And it helped free me up and give me a better concept of what the medium was capable of doing. And the other works, the Apollo, of course, came from 10 years of study, in a sense, because I was in Russia for the State Department in 1961 when Gagarin orbited the Earth. And when Kennedy said, in a decade, we're going to put a man on the moon. So I started my own idea of Apollo and watched the development of this through the years. And then, of course, when it was about to happen, I was well into the whole thing. It's probably one of the biggest pieces I've done and the most intricate in terms of color.
And
involving scientific elements, probably not too well represented for the learned minds, but for me it was a real adventure.
Yeah, for all the intricate little images that are around that.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then with the Outer Worlds, the
Yeah.
fascinating thing for me is the way that you've taken the aluminum and then
Yes.
superimposed it on the
Right.
print.
Right. And that was the link up in space between the Russians and the Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it would be a good companion piece for the Apollo to have both of them in your collection.
Yeah, they make a wonderful set.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, since that 2009 period, I understand your work has gone really in a different direction.
Well, that's what happens when things change. When we moved to Meadowood, I lost the use of my big press. And when you don't have that, you got to be smart and find other ways
Right.
to express what you have in mind to do. And I think the ability that and the opportunity that the new direction has offered, you don't rely on the way you were able to express so easily many of those things you've done in the past. And I worked a little harder, did more research in material, finding it in newspapers, magazines.
Mm-hmm.
Moving out of my studio, I found all kinds of elements that I'd been putting away. So maybe you suffer a little bit by losing all of that, but you find something else which takes its place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an exciting venture to see how far I could go, both in scale and in what the contents of the work. I think the later things that I've done in that direction that involved elements of my drawing, watercolors, old proofs of prints that I'd done in the past, in a sense makes it more legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
It relates it more to who I am as an artist and what I was able to express.
Yeah. It's almost that your signature is there in many different ways
Yes,
in those
right.
collages.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you've had an extraordinarily long career in the arts and in printmaking, especially. As you look back, is there anything that you think that you really have achieved as an artist that sets you off, perhaps from others?
I think I feel very good about the work I've done, but I also feel very, very good about the program that we put together here at Indiana University, together with Marvin Lowe and Wendy Kelman, who were my two associates on the faculty. But we also had tremendous students. You know, they make you look good. And I hope we deserve some of that, but we set a pretty high standard, especially for the Master of Fine Arts. And we took many people who were a little older, a little more mature. They had been out in the world, probably very good at some other profession, and just brought them in there and let them grow and develop. They helped bring other students that weren't quite that well informed yet up to a better level. We extended the program by a year, which infuriated a lot of people at the beginning, but it's the clear wisdom at the end that it did a great deal of good.
So the fact that you've been a teacher artist has been very important to you.
Right. And you mentioned the two words, teacher and artist. They watch you very carefully, these people, especially the very good ones. And being really involved in the work that you do and what you demand of them, they see that you're making similar demands on yourself. And I pushed them out into the university. I made them take, this is not much, I made them take at least 6 hours in any other department. I made sure they went to concerts and listened to good people speaking. And in other words, really make them use the university. Because sometimes I feel students have a tendency to find a very comfortable zone and not be challenged. And I thought that especially the very good ones needed to have that.
Well, in many ways, that's been a reflection of your own work, where you bring in
Yes.
so many disparate disciplines and
Right.
so forth, and your knowledge and interest and love for so many different
Yes.
things.
We did a lot of mixed media work. Sometimes they went out into ceramics and tried to put the printed images on ceramic surfaces. They worked with fabrics and things of that nature.
Well, we really appreciate your graciousness in inviting us into your studio to be with you for a little bit.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And I think that Indiana University and Purdue have a tremendous amount of wonderful programs, things to offer. A lot of nonsense is spoken about football and basketball and all of these things. But essentially, I think both institutions are doing a marvelous job in the basic idea of edification and teaching.
Thank you again.
Been a pleasure.